Mars. If you're 50 or under, you'll almost certainly see humans land on its surface in your lifetime. But will we ever live there permanently? As one of the 6 classic planets, our knowledge of Mars is as old as human history itself. In fact, over 4,000 years ago, ancient Egyptians were aware of Mars's wandering nature, its retrograde motion across the sky, and they recorded it. Its reddish color, easily discernible with the naked eye, Mars came to be known as Hardashir to the Egyptians, meaning the Red One, or Red Horus. To Chinese astronomers, it was the Fire Star, and to the Greeks, it was Ares, the god of war, which is where the Romans inherited the god and changed the name to the one we use today, Mars. Fun fact, pretty much everyone knows that Mars is the god of war, but did you also know that he's the guardian of agriculture as well? Credit to the Romans for understanding the importance and vulnerability of their crops and livestock. Yet another reason their empire lasted so long. Today, Mars is the future in the eyes of many would-be astronauts, myself included. I confess I've always been drawn to Mars since I picked up my first book on astronomy. But for this video, I'm going to put that starry-eyed version of myself in the rear view and objectively examine Mars as best I can. We're going to look at why people will spend billions to move to Mars permanently. After all, if there isn't money to be made, then it simply isn't happening. Just because something's possible doesn't mean it will happen, and it never will without the profit motive. This is what so many other space channels ignore and why they quickly find themselves in the realm of fantasy. We're going to look at what Mars has to offer potential colonists that they can't get anywhere else, or at least cheaper. It's also important to know who would make such a trip, so we'll briefly touch on that. And when all is said and done, when Mars has a thriving colony or two, what will its ultimate fate several hundred years down the road be? Well, let's start off with who goes to Mars. There will of course be the millionaires and billionaires like Elon Musk providing some much needed investment currency to one-up their competition and own a home on Mars. I honestly doubt many will actually go, but simply owning a vacation home on Mars will be a huge status boost, even if they never set foot on the red planet. Which brings us to another class of person, the servant, aka general laborer. Some will be robotic, I'm sure, but being able to afford human labor will always be a flex. The indentured servants in early America were mostly Europeans that sold themselves into bondage for years in order to book passage to the New World. It's easy to foresee the same happening on Mars. There will also be lottery winners and employees, mostly scientists and engineers, paid handsomely to do a 2-year stint on Mars to further their employer's interests, and even more handsomely to stay for an additional 2 years, as generous raises will be extremely preferable to bringing them home and then replacing them. Early on, the population will no doubt skew older and childless, as the increased risk of cancer and bone or muscle loss impact the elderly less severely. We will also see a preference probably for women or shorter adults in general, as their caloric needs are roughly 20 to 25% less that of your average male. So now that we know who is going to Earth, let's see both what's special about Mars and how potential investors hope to make a profit. Let's start off on a positive note. Mars has a 24-hour day. Well, technically a 24-hour and 37-minute day, but it's all the same to Earth planets, as the length of our own day-night cycle fluctuates more than 37 minutes throughout the year thanks to seasons. But a 24-hour day is huge, as Earth life can be transplanted to the Martian surface and with a little radiation shielding actually grow with available sunlight. So not only does this save energy, but colonists will be able to experience a touch of Earth's natural greenery with domed over forests and artificial streams. Now, needless to say, the mental well-being of Martian colonists will greatly benefit from the inclusion of Earth and its soothing greens. Now for a con. Solar power just isn't enough. It may sound odd considering how rovers have survived years on the Martian surface relying completely on solar, but humans are not rovers. We can't turn off parts of our bodies and hibernate through long periods of sunlight. Also, the energy requirements of a human colony are going to be at least a magnitude greater than what a rover needs to drive a few meters a day. Solar is fine as a supplemental energy source to power electronics and small robotics that are doing light work. But the core needs of a human colony will have to be powered by nuclear. Now, a pro is that there's water ice nearly everywhere on Mars. While we believe the Moon and even Mercury's poles to be rich in ice, Mars is still the only nearby world where you can reliably find water almost anywhere on its surface, or slightly underneath it. Put simply, water is life. Finding water with a compact nuclear power source means you've not only found water to drink, but air to breathe as well as rocket fuel. So to answer the question of whether or not people will permanently live on Mars, the answer is a resounding yes, though I must confess that our own moon will likely be the better location in the distant future. But speaking of the distant future, be sure to come back next week when we explore the distant future of Mars in general, but specifically how Ceres, being moved into orbit around Mars, could fix the red planet's many issues. Hope to see you soon, and thanks for watching.